Hi, Pamela Donnelly here with Gate College System.
And hey, I'm Ethan Sawyer, college essay guy. And Pamela and I have spent a lot of years looking at probably thousands of college essays. So we wanted to share with you 5 mistakes that we see come up most often in the college essay process.
Okay, mistake number 1, the personal essay that is not personal.
Totally, it happens. So what this means is, like, for example, I'll read an essay and I'll be like, you know what, I kind of already know all this stuff from your activities list, your additional information section. Or I'll read it and it'll feel like the essay is coming from like the head as opposed to like, you know, a deeper, more vulnerable place. So a simple way to check for this is to, once you've written your personal statement, to read it aloud to someone and then ask them this question. And you got to get them to be honest with you. Ask them, do you not only know more about me, but do you actually feel closer to me after hearing this story? It's a great way to check.
It's so important to have a personal statement, to have some vulnerability, but then to watch out for mistake number 2. Some students go too far, too much information about a challenge without enough time left in the essay to talk about what it meant to them and how they process this in their lives. You want to talk about a challenge perhaps, but you don't want to overshare.
Yeah. One of the things I'll say to students is, like, you don't get into college, you know, just because your parents got divorced or because you're undocumented or because you lost someone close to you. You know, while those may have been impactful experiences, colleges really want to know, how did you metabolize the experience? And by that I mean, like, what did you do about it? What did you learn? So one of the great ways to check for that, to make sure that you're actually saying those things, is to kind of give yourself like a word budget. So imagine that the first third of your essay is setting up the challenge and the effects on your life. Okay, that's the first third. Part 2 is then thinking about, okay, well, what did I do about this? How did I process this? And then third, what did I learn from the experience? That's a great way to make sure that your essay is balanced. Now, it could be that if you're writing about a challenge for the first time, your first draft is going to be all about the challenge. That's totally okay. Don't worry about the word limit for the first draft. Ultimately, though, you're probably going to want to squish those challenges kind of into about the first third of the essay.
Maintaining that ratio between vulnerability and a demonstration of the so what or lesson learned is important. Those percentages can really help guide you. Okay, mistake number 3, focusing on a topic entirely disconnected from the rest of the application.
Yeah, sometimes I'll read an essay and be like, wow, awesome essay about your grandfather, but like, your grandfather's not actually the one applying to college. So there's an easy way to check for this. Like, basically take your essay and then highlight all the parts that are about you, like specifically definitely about you, and then highlight all the parts that are pretty much about somebody else, you know, another person or about another event. And ask yourself this question: can my reader get from my essay 4 or 5 core values, which is to say 4 or 5 things that are like really super important to you? You should be able to. If you can't, step back and go, okay, what are 4 to 5 things that I really want the college to know about me? And then how could I come up with like a specific example that could show each one of these core values? I happen to feel like core values actually equals more information about you, but like your soul. And that's what's important to get into the essay.
Wow, and I totally agree. Your core values and who you are as a person is what has to be in that essay. Now, the next problem that students sometimes have is that they just create a brag list on their essays. And they just go through this entire list of accomplishments and they're all disconnected. And you know, the fact that when you were in 2nd grade, you won a science fair, and then you were quarterback in high school of the football team, and then you won some awards, and it just goes all over the place. What can they do about that problem?
Yeah, so it's tricky because on the one hand, you do want to demonstrate like all the awesome stuff you've done, but you've got to do it in a particular way. So it can't just be, as Pamela is saying, like a brag sheet, essentially. One way to do this is by making sure that the thing that you want to talk about, whether it's like the award you won, you know, or the position you won, is connecting it to a value. Now, what I mean by this, like, there was a student that I worked with a few years ago who had this incredible like international debate award that she'd won. But the essay wasn't about winning the award, it was about how she was super shy growing up. And then, you know, she worked to overcome that shyness, ended up joining debate, came out of her shell, found out what she wanted to study. Oh, and then by the way, also won this award. And that award represented not just, hey, I'm awesome, but like, hey, I found my voice. And so by going through and demonstrating the challenges, first of all, she earned that, you know, brag moment, but also connecting it to like, hey, this was more than just an award. This represents me finding me, okay? So another quick example is like a student who wanted to talk about his, like the languages that he spoke. And I was like, okay, rather than just be like, oh, I speak these languages, what does speaking those languages help you do? And he said, well, you know, it helps me like with the students that I'm tutoring. I can communicate with them like literally in their language. And I was like, awesome. So the value there is like helping others, right? So if you can connect the value, which is like helping others or finding my voice, to the award or the thing that you want to show, you bring the values forward, so it's more about those and less about the thing that you won. Then the thing that you won is like, oh, by the way, I also won this thing, or I can do this thing.
Make it about being of service to others, not just an expression of ego or insecurity. A final mistake to avoid is number 5. Did you know that students often write about common topics, they make common connections, and they use common language? Oh yeah, they do that.
Totally true.
So what are some of those common topics? Well, there's the sports injury, the mission trip, the musical instrument. What are some common connections? Well, that event or that item taught me something about hard work or perseverance. You know, common language usually has something to do with, oh, I've learned so much and our experiences make us who we are. That's almost a cliche, so you've got to be careful. What can they do about that?
Yeah, so I'm never going to say to a student like, don't write about that thing, but if you start to write about these common things, it's a lot harder to stand out. So uncommon topics can be more interesting, and it could be almost anything. So like one student that I met wrote about cupcakes because cupcakes were like in every single part of her life. Or another student wrote about like scrapbooking and her love for that, So those are, more uncommon topics. If you don't have an uncommon topic, it's really important to make uncommon connections. Now, uncommon connections are basically not what everybody else would say about basketball or about, the mission trip. So for example, instead of saying basketball taught me hard work, discipline, and perseverance, what did basketball teach you about like your relationship to like healthy boundaries and like what you needed to say no to in your life? Or, for the violin essay, you're like, what did that teach you about like, democracy or privacy? I'm just throwing out random examples. But when you start to like activate your brain thinking about those uncommon connections, they create much more interesting paragraphs and set your violin essay apart from the many other violin essays. And then finally, in terms of uncommon language, basically just ask yourself this: are there any sentences in my essay that could be in someone else's essay? And I know this sounds like really hardcore, but go through and actually look, and if you see any essay that someone else could have written, cut it.
You know what? It's so important to keep in mind, everybody, that there is so much that students can get right with a little bit of guidance, and that's why we're here. So no matter where you come from, no matter whether your parents went to college or not, no matter how much money you do or don't have, whatever the limitations are you may perceive you have in your life, the truth is that you can make a step forward toward a great future for yourself. The college essay is a necessary part of that if you're going to head to college. We at Gay College System are so happy to help. Ethan, thank you so much for giving some great pointers today.
For sure. Stay curious.